Richard, what's good, buddy?
Hey, how's it going? Yeah, I guess I'm doing good. Just last few weeks has certainly been like a pretty insane flood of news that's like quite alarming, I guess, from like all my podcasts and feeds that I listen to are just kind of like listing off all these crazy things that are happening. Uh, but yeah, I've been pretty fine.
That's good. Yeah, lots of uncertainty with the tariffs.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know if Trump's doing it on purpose. He bought cheap, and then because of his policy, well, him, supporting crypto, Bitcoin went up, everything went up, and then maybe he cashed out, and
He had
then
his
now
own coin at one point.
yeah, and then he wants Bitcoin to drop again, and then he's gonna buy it up. I can see that, like, creating instability or uncertainty in the market is a way to lower something like Bitcoin. He can lower it and then buy a bunch for the national treasury or whatever, and then basically get at a bargain instead of buying it at 150 Canadian, whatever the American equivalent is. You can get it for cheaper.
Yeah, and that's even then that's crypto is only like one aspect of like I guess what's going on these days is like they're doing this whole like flood strategy where they push out like so many different actions in so many different domains like across the board that people like the media and stuff like can't keep track of it all. And it's kind of just ultimately I guess it's like a large like power grab. Uh, but they're definitely like they laid off like a bunch of judges that they deemed to be like not loyal. They laid them off. They sent like a survey around the FBI trying to identify like any FBI agent that worked on like the January 6th like event or whatever mob. They were trying to like fire all the FBI agents that like worked on that case. So there's definitely like there's all these like it's like getting rid of like trying to like get only loyalists in every department and get control of like the spending uh and like crypto is like one aspect of this like larger plan. But it's
Hmm.
kind of wild. It's like how many different people have like come together with this like common goal of just like removing all like regulation and government and just putting power like in their own hands. It really yeah, it seems like an oligarchy arrangement where there's just like people with money and power at the top and they kind of do whatever. But yeah, it's still hard even then to see like what is the ultimate goal. Like what's the point of having money and power? Like the whole idea of America and stuff or the North America was like like a large middle class that's like well supported with like a social safety net. But like what's the benefit to anyone of like converting that into like the same thing hopefully but with one super rich powerful guy at the top that just kind of like puts his enemies in jail? Like how does that advance us as a civilization? Is kind of a weird uh like I don't know what people are hoping for, like the ones that are doing this whole system transformation.
Yeah, I don't know. Showing that people can be above the law, and that's dangerous.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm doing like some side projects. Not much going on at work. I'm reading a book right now. Uh, it's like a book that's like critiquing capitalism. It's called like The Mechanic and the Luddite, and it's talking about how like there's capitalism and there's technology, and these two things work together to like largely guide like what humans innovate and what they consider like a valuable innovation. And I think it's kind of making the point that like we largely decide like what is valuable by like what will make the most money, and then we put like funding behind things that will give a large return on investment, and that's not like the best way to decide what gets innovated or researched. It's just like a approximation, because like capitalism tries to sort of distribute like money around to people based on how much value they're like creating. But there's sort of, when that gets going like really wildly, where people start dumping in like tons of money into whatever they want, and then things become like popular just because so much money's like going into them, and then there's no connection with like actual utility. It's just like it becomes like a system where like rich people decide on a trend, bank on it. Maybe some banks go bankrupt like along the way. The government like bails it out, and then it doesn't really result in like any human advancement or something. But yeah, it's definitely, I'm having trouble like putting all these, there's so many like ideas, like as systems become shown to be quite like vulnerable. A lot of people talk about, like getting to know their personal communities, like getting to know their neighbors, like talking to their coworkers, creating like support networks around themselves with like the people that are physically near them and live near them, and sort of using that as like the new social security net, because no longer do people believe that like the government will support them. So that's sort of a positive thing, like human beings getting in touch with one another again, and forming like local groups that try to influence the local area where they live for the better. And people are pretty motivated to do that, I think, right now. They're just like very disorganized. But it would be nice to see like tons of like community groups that are focused on like speaking for the individual and the local issues like arise, and just kind of handle things in local areas in ways that like federal stuff cannot really handle, even if it wanted to.
Interesting.
But I'm almost like just waiting for stuff to like get started, because like I would love to belong to more groups. Like I'm part of a few online groups that like are starting to have like conversations about like workers pushing back against certain like business decisions. But I'd like to be part of more groups that talk about like even something as like abstract like art. Like I would love to be part of like an activist like art group that meets on a regular basis and has discussions about how we as individuals can like do art, whatever our skills happen to be, like use our skills to do art in order to convey like the messages. Like, we could sort of talk about the messages we want to convey, and how we can voice like our opinions through art, and where we can show our art or something like that. Or maybe create like a digital space online where people can show like kind of activist like images that convey like clearly like a political message or something, or an idea. That kind of stuff would seem fun. It seems like the right path to take in terms of like what's the most fun way to like have an impact without like with a low overhead or something. And also it would be just a way to meet people and like form a community kind of.
Richard, what do you think the ideal solution is for everything?
The stuff that sounds promising to me, like the system that we had, I think the more I look into it, it doesn't seem fair. Like the people in North America have like such a good life compared to like the rest of the world. And sometimes it seems increasingly like maybe the good that we have it in North America, it comes at the expense of like people in other parts of the world. So I would like sort of something to be done about that. But that gets into like this idea of like if we in North America, let's say, like if we figured out like the solution, like we started building trains and we built apartment buildings and we built like parks, and we established like a 4-day work week, and we had sort of like basic income for those that need it, and we had some way of like raising the minimum wage or something where like whatever someone's passion was, they could do that and make a living, and we could build like, you know, people could get entire jobs building public housing, which would bring down like rental prices, and there could be like better urban design. I hear that, like, I think Singapore's government is fairly like militant, but I think Singapore apparently is like, you know, it's this region that's like very walkable, and everybody's kind of living there quite peacefully. Like, I don't know what the government situation is, but if we had like the urban planning of Singapore and like the freedoms of that we've come to know like in America, something like that. But then there's this problem of like, how do you get like Russia on board and China on board and like North Korea at some point? Like, you have to sort of spread this message of like basic human rights and healthcare and like social security nets and like work life balance. Like, there's no way that message would make it to like India, for example. Like, you know, that's not like, that country's not going to like transform into one that's like free of castes or something like overnight. And then, but it's like sitting in North America enjoying like 4-day work week, for example, also is not going to like put any pressure on like India because nobody has like connection or something. So there's kind of like unreconcilable like issues. Like, you know, even if like Switzerland is a nice place to live, what does that mean for the rest of the world? Like, it's still like, it's not really fun to make like these pockets of like nice living pockets that are funded by like banking systems or something, and then like you just kind of forget about like the what's going on in the rest of the world and like keep out immigration or something. So it's only like a set number of people that are born there that like enjoy the privilege. So yeah, it seems. But then yeah, the problem is like, in order to create, you know, like a global, like in order to like whatever rules we decide on are like the fair rules, in order to like export those, you know, it would still be like trying to convince like the entire Chinese population that they should care about like their individuality rather than like sacrifice themselves for the good of the state, which is like, I think that's their sort of mindset, is that like, you know, every individual in China like works to rise like the nation to power, and they don't care so much about like themselves. They care more about their community and their nationality. But trying to convince them that like they should try for like basic rights and they shouldn't work like 6 days a week and they should like regulate that stuff to their own like detriment almost at first. It seems like that, you know, at least that would be like sort of trying to like thwart like their culture in some way, because it's like their government's mixed in with their culture. So it doesn't even seem like right to sort of try to like free them or something. But then, you know, but then you see all the suppression of information. They can't really make a decision for themselves and they can't vote. So like, who knows if they had a choice, what would they want? Or like, would they ever have a choice? So it's kind of, it's weird. Like, it's just, yeah, that's what I feel at this moment is like, what possibly is the right, like the right thing to do? Like, what's the right side to fight on? And like, what are the issues that we want to push? And, everyone's on like a different page, and the news is just like rapidly being like, all these rich people are like looting the banks and stuff, and it's like trying to like just figure out like, what do we do, like what is the individual supposed to do to like make a life at this time in history is like a very confusing question.
Yeah. Yeah,
But
as you're
art,
talking, I'm thinking
yeah,
about my understanding how everything is interconnected. And like I have a pretty in-depth understanding, and I'm just what I don't get, like I get it, but I also don't get at the same time. Why do we need more people? Why is population growth important?
yeah, I had
It
an idea
shouldn't
about that.
it shouldn't be. We should be okay with allowing our populations to decrease, but leveraging technology to replace people in the jobs that they were doing where possible.
Hmm.
So I'm it's just if their population isn't keeping up, then they're considered a dying nation. So I think Japan, last I heard, was considered a dying nation because their birth rate isn't keeping up with their death rate. But we have too many people on this planet, especially poor people, or like, here we go. Like I'm separating people into like classes based off their wealth, but it's just like there's so many people born into like extreme poverty because there isn't enough resources for them to be healthy.
Yeah.
We've created we created cities, these artificial areas that people are living in, limited nature. Some areas have no sewage, like they're just like shitting in the water. And there's a lot of people on top of each other, and it's leading to disease. And it's, in my mind, I think if we don't have a focus or goal as a species to unite us, what's the point to all this productivity? Our inefficiency is through the roof because, like, even with Canada, we have all these interprovincial rules and limitations, and that hurt our own economy. There's so many inefficiencies because everybody's sort of like pitted against each other, or pit. I don't know the expression, but you know what I mean. Like everybody's against each other instead of us being united for a common goal. It's like if we had an external threat or we were aware of one, we may unite as a people, pool together our resources, and try to develop tech to be able to counter whatever that threat could be.
Right now, interestingly, like climate change should be that threat, but it's like it's a slow moving threat, which is really hard for humans to recognize as a threat at all. And so one would hope that like every nation of the world would be bonded together by the need to fight like climate change. But they've really not like done a good job of actually identifying it as a threat. And now like America's like disagreeing that it even exists or something. And that's like an interesting thing. Like it's like how bad would climate change have to be and how fast would it have to be affecting us for everyone to realize like we just need to address this as our main concern and like drop everything else for the moment.
You know what I think, man? If we're not going to wipe ourselves out with nukes, I do think that it is possible. Our populations are going to grow so dense that another virus is going to come along and take out a good chunk of us. Because, like, we're pretty much on top of each other in cities. And it's very easy for viruses to spread. I do see it as just a natural way for some calling, I guess. We have to reduce our population. It's crazy.
Yeah. I feel like when people in America and North America when they talk about like having more kids as a solution, I think they're just reacting to the idea that like the boomer generation, like after World War II, I guess, like the boomers were all born, and they're like there's like a really high number of people that are the same age, like that are, that everyone's like the parents' generation are today. They're all becoming old, and there's this issue of like old people need old folks care, and they have pensions, and they have like needs to be taken care of. And the question is like, if there isn't, at least an equivalently sized like population coming behind them to like work the jobs today and pay the taxes and pay into the pension funds and pay for like the old folks care, then there's like sort of a crisis of like who is going to take care of like these old people. And then the other angle is that like I think there's like India and China have like very large populations, and with a large number of people, you'll always have like the odd like smart person that starts innovating and starts like getting into the good universities. And so there's like a thing where it's like if you had to statistically bet like where will the smartest people come from, it will probably be from like the races that have the largest like populations. Uh, and the thing is, like, there's no reason to like see that really as a threat. Like, it doesn't like if Indian people are innovating the most, or Chinese people, or like all the American universities are full of like people from other countries that are like that are talented enough to like spill into our universities and like take up all the seats. There's nothing like inherently wrong with that because it's just people, like human beings doing what they do. But there's like this problem of like the American like white people seeing that as like their race is like losing and they're gonna be the inferior ones, and like they're gonna start, you know, like all the bosses and the CEOs will all be like these other races that uh like our it's like almost like our concern is like they'll treat us like we used to treat them basically, and that's of course bad. But even then it's like we still, if that happens, like we still deserve it, like we did it to them, so they at least deserve to like do it to us. Or perhaps they would not even do it to us, like perhaps they'll just treat us like regular human beings and give us the same chance as anyone to like go through the system. uh the only maybe issue is that like school in China seems very inhuman, the way that like students are like grinded through like the system. And so it would kind of be, you know, like if their work culture and their study culture gets exported like to North America, then it would kind of be unfortunate if like all of us and all of our kids like have to work like 6-7 days a week, and our kids go to school for like 12 hours a day, and that would be kind of grueling, like when we sort of know that they don't have to have that kind of intensity to their life, unless like this is an unanswerable, like, you know, it's like I don't know if they do or not, because the only reason there's been so much leisure in North America may just be because we've enjoyed like an insulated bubble that has exported, like, you know, these factories in China make all of our products for really cheap, and the stress that they're under to do that is our benefit, where we get to buy these like cheap products, and that's why we get to enjoy this life of like leisure. So I wonder kind of like maybe what it means to just be human is to undergo this kind of like stress and grind and like, you know, 24/7 work and burnout. Like maybe that's just the reality of being a human on a planet that's crowded, and like it's not, you know, it doesn't feel like a great solution to just like carve out our own little bubble where we have it good and everyone else just like takes the blunt of the labor. But I don't really know how to like reconcile all of that. Uh, Other than it makes me motivated to like learn to speak Mandarin, because that's like the course that I'm sort of the language that I've chosen like to study, and I haven't been doing like a great job. But whenever I think about like you know, if like one of the answers to all of this is to like cooperate better, especially with like other nations, then it seems like the correct move for me right now would be like, you know, I already speak English, learn to speak like Chinese really well, and then just sort of take on a role of like communicating well to like both nations, like China and America, or something. And I'm sure there'll be some like use for that in the future. Hopefully, like I could find some spot where I help companies work together, I help like trade or something like that, and that avoids like conflict because due to the better understanding that like emerges or something like that.
Hmm.
Uh, yeah, so
So
that's what I sort of that's my yeah. There's no
yeah,
conclusion there, but that's my thoughts. Yeah.
yeah. I think going 6-7 hours a day, 12-hour days is in the wrong direction. Here's the thing: there has to be like a balance, and I mean, we've already experienced something like that with the Industrial Revolution, and then that's why we got unions and they made the 5-day work week
Yeah.
because it wasn't sustainable. The thing is, like, people have to sharpen their axe. They have to feel like they're living for something. Otherwise, their productivity drops. We're not unlimited in our capacity. And yeah, it's like you got to have free time to spend the money as well, right? So the economy is dependent upon the earning and spending, the flow of money between the people. So it's all interesting stuff. See, I'm all about like instead of just like living within your means and being frugal because you don't make much, make enough to live the way that you should live naturally. Now I say that and I don't have a piece of land yet where I can just like build a cabin and fish and hunt, but that's ideal. And that's cost prohibitive because to get your own piece of land these days, you got to go far remote, away
Yeah.
from people. And then there's risks with that, and then you're isolated. So it's tough to have it all. Tough to have a community that's also, you know, living like close to how we were supposed to live. Like there's communities in Costa Rica. My buddy's traveling there today or tomorrow. He's gonna spend 3 weeks there, cruising around, checking with different permanence cultures out there, like permanence farming. And I think that's neat. Where like they don't put their kids in a traditional school to institutionalize them because that stifles curiosity and growth. They let the kids learn at their own pace, what they want to learn. Let them have curiosity, which is what they're supposed to have. I mean, I was just talking to my partner today about like letting kids go outside to play all day. And apparently that's like parental neglect because there's so many things that can happen to the kid. It's like it's just not safe anymore. At least that's the perception of parents. But yeah, I don't know why my caretakers were cool with me being outside all day. Like I wasn't allowed to come in. I had to be out there.
Yeah,
I
there's
had to,
definitely was a change. Like our the previous generations did kind of like ride bikes around the neighborhood or greater as much as they wanted, and then there has been a change. Like I think with like cars and roads and the neighbors no longer being friends, like there's definitely a perception at least that kids can't safely roam around due to all the like we don't have these tight communities that monitor each other anymore. We just have like individuals that can act in any way. And then there was at least one case where like some guy was like letting his kids take the public bus to school themselves, and I feel like that was like a pivotal case where some court decided like you have to like if it's like the public bus, not the school bus, you have to like an adult has to like accompany the kids to school because they can't just be like young kids on a bus. And that's now like the precedent court decision where everyone sort of points to that and says like therefore like kids can't be just left around because the court has said that it's not safe like unless there's an adult like in some places or something.
yeah, public transportation. The buses, the public transportation. It's confusing at best, and the kids could end up on the other side of the city because they don't know what's up because their situational awareness is likely shit. And I get that. I mean, that's a problem with the transportation system. They could have it so that the kid gets on the bus and their destination's pre-programmed. There are ways, like so the kid gets on, the kid has a watch or something, an app, and the app says, "You are here. This is your route. You're getting off here, and then the route back is this bus, and you're gonna get off here." It's all very like real time on the phone because buses are complicated. They are, but it's like if we don't let kids explore their surroundings and do things, then how are they supposed to navigate the world?
Yeah.
Hmm.
I heard that in Japan they have like a tradition where like a young kid will be they'll send like a young kid on like an errand to like pick up something from the store. And this is like a specific moment where it's like the first time you send like a young kid, you know, just when they get old enough to a certain age, you send them on like their first errand where they're like unsupervised and they have to go like, you know, somewhere like a couple blocks to like go to a store and pick something up or something. But they it's like the first moment where they do an independent task, and apparently like that they make like a big deal out of that because it sort of is like the moment where you become like independent, and that's kind of interesting. But I guess in like obviously like in Japan it's like safe to do that, and everyone knows if they see like a kid on their own it's because they're like doing one of these tasks or whatever, then they all just kind of support.
That's cool. See, if we could believe in the people around us that they're actually going to like help our kids instead of
Yeah.
rape and murder, it'd be a better world. But I think this whole sense of, you know, we're all individuals not accountable to each other allows
Yeah,
for
that's
these
such a hard
terrible
thing.
behaviors or things to happen.
Yeah, it's like anonymity. Like the, you know, yeah, like people can sort of like show up from another country or something, do something, and then leave. And there's not. It's like societies are big enough where you can sort of be like an anonymous person and not like, you know, back in the day, small towns, everybody had like a reputation, everybody knew each other. If there was like a stranger in town, like word would get around and they'd figure out like who it was. But the yeah, like groups of people are too big and like mobile now to like do that. And that's kind of reflection of like the internet, like how like people are so mean on the internet because they are totally anonymous, and like in many cases like, you know, it's really hard to track them even if you want to. And that's such an interesting it's like, you know, the way the human mind works and trust works and everything is based on like physical proximity and like mutually assured destruction. But when you have big cities and internet, that's gone. And then but it's so interesting, like could we think of some way to bring that back, like smaller internet communities that are siloed off where you can let your kids like go on the internet, and if they stay like within a certain area then they can operate like autonomously. Like kids could even have money, like some limited money to spend in a certain region of the internet that was like kept safe as like a kind of a small town like internet thing.
I think they already have that.
Yeah, like there's like child rule, like yeah, child locks and stuff.
Yeah, and I think
But
those
it
are
kind of
fair.
seems like the equivalent of like just it's like locking certain content away from a kid or locking the kid like in a house, and like sort of like it's like the solution is they'll be safe if they're in the house, but it would be cool to design like within this like urban environment, you know, like if everyone's trustworthy and monitored, like or like, you know, they monitor each other or something, or have some social agreement within like a certain like number of blocks of a city, then the kid can like visit all these businesses or everything, or the grocery store like within safety. That would be cool instead of just like making it so trivial, like, you know, as long as they're like in their bedroom they're safe, or like as long as they're on this one locked down like website or something.
Interesting.
I
Yeah,
was
it's.
thinking oh yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna say it's definitely changed a lot,
Yeah,
and
yeah, with society growing and internet, those are like huge things that are like brand new and just only like 10, 20 years old.
you wonder if it was the internet that's the cause of kids not being on their bikes anymore and having their freedom. Hmm.
Yeah, there was a whole thing where like, you know, there's always like a rate of injury and violence, but with the internet, with like when news is not local anymore, then we just see like every violent act that happens anywhere is like fed to us. And that of course like makes us believe that things are violent like in our personal area. We don't really have a sense for like what's the rate of crime and the types of crime around us right now. We just know like nationwide, every single crime. And then we just believe that like, oh, it's not safe out there because like someone got shot somewhere in America, so therefore everyone's afraid of like getting shot today or something. And that's kind of like, we almost like shouldn't have that information unless like it's within like 50K of kilometers of us. We shouldn't
Yeah,
know about violent things. Yeah.
it needs to be relevant to our community and our neighborhood. For
Yeah. Plus,
sure.
like, another like divider is like religion, I guess. Like people have like different religious groups are like opposed to each other or different ways of thinking. And I was talking with some people yesterday about like there's this philosophy called like nihilism, and I was looking at it because one of the things about it is uh, like I think it's true that like an individual who's thinking in a nihilist way is very like aware that like every system that exists in society that's being dictated to them is kind of like an arbitrary system that like humans have designed for themselves to like, you know, control their own behaviors. And so there's part of this philosophy is like the constant like realization that like no system for good or bad or law or like any country system or any religion or anything, it's all sort of like arbitrary constructions that just like guide our behavior in certain ways, and there's no way to like like fully trust them or verify or like sort of prove them, like prove their accuracy. And so the like if you become nihilist, you sort of become like immobilized, where all day you just sort of sit in your house and you can't really, there's no action you can take that isn't like questionable in some way, or it's like not the correct action. But I heard that one of the purposes of like you're supposed to like become like really nihilistic to the point where and the phrase they say like to the point where you have like a personal religious transformation, like whatever that means. And I was sort of thinking like for me, I feel like if I become like totally disillusioned with all the way society works and every possible system, then usually I end up grounding myself with like a belief in like the creation of art in a very general way. And I thought that was, but I guess the point I'm trying to get at here is like I feel like every human being could kind of do that for themselves. Like you could have every person on the planet who belongs to like every like different countries, institutions, different religions, all these different belief systems. If every human individually like they sort of challenged all of their assumptions and sort of deconstructed them to get all the way down to this state where they realize that like every belief that anyone has is just kind of arbitrary and based on some personal experience, and we sort of get right back down to the root, and then we realize like the thing that all humans have in common is like a desire to just like exist for some reason, like nobody can say why. And then then you start building on top of that and saying like it's like, well, we agree everyone wants to be alive, and so then what's the next thing? Like, well, we agree then everyone needs food, and then everyone needs shelter, and like just like build build things back one layer at a time, trying to be as general as possible until you get to more like sophisticated things, like we can have a whole economy that works in service of these fundamental things that everyone like doesn't know why, but they all believe them to be true in some core way. I don't know, that was like one train of thought that I was having. Like it's obviously like that would never happen, but it's kind of interesting. It's like why are two random people so different than each other when like obviously their goal is the same. Like they both like feel pleasure and pain and sort of want autonomy and want to be in control of their environment, and like there's just so many things they would have in common by being human that like what's the point of like disagreeing over some really obscure high level issue and then like deciding they both can't exist or something.
Interesting questions. Yeah.
But yeah, this came from I listened to a podcast, and the reason I learned about like nihilism was this podcast I listened to was giving a summary of a book. The book was, I think it's called The Underground Man, and it's written by like Dostoevsky, which is like a Russian literature guy. And so I've been learning about this guy. I knew him before, like this author Dostoevsky. He wrote like this book called like Crime and Punishment. I think the book that it's called like Stories from the Underground, and it's about like a specific individual that people call the Underground Man, like this character in the story. And yeah, it talks about how like this character doesn't really, integrate very well with society and follows this like certain path where he can't really escape his own ideas about like how everything is kind of mostly illusion or whatever. But it was interesting just to like listen to this podcast and learn about that, because it seemed like this author, like Dostoevsky, he was like reacting to an era where like there was these people that were saying that we can treat everything as like a rational conclusion. We can look at the world and we can see the logical and the rational reason for everything, and then we can use logic and reason to like take into account how the world is, and then construct like a perfect utopia by everyone just following like rational logic or whatever. And so, but Dostoevsky's like critique of that was, it's like, well, if you use logic and reason to analyze everything, nothing actually exists. Like you can just you can like deconstruct everything down to nothing, and then you don't even have like any attack. Like there's no logical reason why we care about each other or like people that we know. Like there's no rational logical thing we can point to that like bonds us to, like say like our coworkers or whatever, or our friends. So then therefore like what does rationalism do other than just leave us with like this disconnected nothingness? And then we are like, what we do from there is we have to have some realization that like we enjoy being around other people, and then we come to believe like, oh, it's like we have this belief in that like we deserve to live, we deserve to be happy, being around people makes us happy, then let's be around people and let's form communities or something. And I think that was all like, I think Dostoevsky was like doing that to show that like there's things that rationalism, logic can't deliver us the answer for. Some things are just like we form communities, and we eat like food together because we are humans, and there's no like explanation for that.
It's in our
But
programming.
yeah, and then
it's all in our programming.
It does seem that like a lot of times like cultures and religions like form around those ideas, like people coming together, going to church, people like eating meals together. These are all like conventions that we have that are trying to sort of like just give us like some reason like to like communicate with each other, which we don't always realize that that's what we want, but we always kind of do want like community or groups of people. And then we create like in a religion just to give ourselves a reason to like go be in a room of people all like once a week or something.
Well, religion's a tool to oppress people, but
yeah, there's so many things tacked onto it. Yeah, that's what's weird, is like it's got these good things that like people agree on, and then they tack on all these extra values, and then you go to war with like another religion, and you're like, it's like, but those are people on the other side too. Like those are interesting people that we could just go talk to. Why are we like fighting them over these values that we decided on that don't have any like utility?
Because we don't like what's different than us. And the tool and leveraging the fact that we have negativity bias or whatever. I mean, there's that, but also there's what was the term? It's negativity bias or something else. That is a thing too, but it's where you discriminate. You don't like what's different than you. So it's used by leaders.
Phobia or something.
I don't remember, but everything that we have, the whole system is created by a bunch of entrepreneurs. And in the end, they created the system that oppresses us. and we continue to allow it to happen because we're too fucking dumb to be able to take care of ourselves on our own. And that way of life was also hard. And people don't like hard; they like easy, path of least resistance. So I don't think anyone would be interested in changing the system, and so they play by the rules. And ultimately, the money is what oppresses us. Greed and fear are the two main emotions that drive most people. So, well, at least most people that are under a banner and that have currency and who can't take care of themselves.
Yeah. I like
Is
that
what it.
analysis though, that these are themes that I'm encountering like in the book I'm reading, like what you're saying about like these things oppressing us, like the entrepreneurs that sort of created the system, and how it's, yeah, we definitely, there's some value in like changing up the system, but definitely, yeah, the path of least resistance being to just kind of go with the flow as long as we do all right, which everyone has been doing for like the past so many decades or whatever. Yeah.
You know, leaving the military, selling my place in Ottawa, consolidating everything. The whole idea is to simplify my life and the amount of inputs in it and the amount of things I have to respond to so that I can just pursue my hobbies and I can
Mhm.
stop getting surprises that fucking like destabilize me and like keep me up at night.
Yeah.
So, like I want to go back to school. I want to have nothing to focus on or care about. So, like going to school and having to work and pay bills and like go grocery shopping, it's fucking dumb. When you go to school, you should just be focused on school, not everything else. Like
Yeah.
to be a full-time student dedicated to learning and you socializing occasionally, that's where it's at. Because I
Yeah.
am like we're all students and I constantly want to be learning. And it's not I don't want to be in an institution where I gotta follow the rules and whatever else. I want to be able to do learning at my own pace, the stuff that I'm interested in. Like, I don't want to be writing reports or fucking none of that stuff. I just want to
Mhm.
be able to absorb knowledge, kind of mesh it together, link the dots, and teach others. And then by teaching others, I master my material.
Yeah, that's the trouble. Like, yeah, like university style school. There's so many good things about it. Like, because you get like a meal plan, access to a gym, like a schedule, like people, there's like clubs and stuff. But then, yeah, the issue is that they're always going to ask you to like write some report that's annoying and like sort of distracts you from doing creative exploration. uh Sometimes but then, yeah, there's like I think there's a lot of courses like around on YouTube, like there's like talented YouTubers that like offer courses. Like there was a guy that he does like modular synth music and he teaches a course like twice a year, and I almost like signed up. It would have been like online, so that's not great. I like to do like in-person courses. So I found like a 2 day, like I've done these 2 day like music creation courses in the past, like at a place near my house, and I'll do one
Mm-hmm.
again like this year. So those are fun, but they don't really come with like any. You don't get like certified, or you don't like have a. There's no exam, there's no like certificate you take away, but it's definitely like such a great like learning because you like come together over 2 days. There's like 8 to 10 people in this room, and you just like for 2 days you learn like a new thing, and then you go away and you just have that skill. And that's, I would love to do that like all the time. uh Even sometimes some of them that I did one time in Edmonton, they were like part of a university, like professors at the university would just teach these like weekend like there's like introduction to Photoshop was like one of them. That's where I learned like most of my photo editing like skills. I think one time there was like maybe a 3 or 4 day like programming one. But yeah, I wonder, like I wish there was more of like a network for those kind of things where you could pick and choose these like short 2-3 day like experiences and just kind of stack them up, and then have like you do like 3 or 4 months of just like gaining a new skill every 2 days and or something like that, and then meeting other people and just kind of having the freedom in your off time to use the skills to like enhance something, maybe present to the class like some kind of thing you created or something like that.
Yeah, no presentations. Nothing
Yeah.
forced or graded anyway. But like
Mhm.
to learn all this to pursue an interest, um that's pretty much the reason why, right? Like that's why I want to do this kind of stuff is
Yeah.
because I'm interested in it. And I'm not the type that wants or needs the accreditations. I understand the importance of having credibility, and so I keep my CD on my SIG block and major retired because people look at that shit and they respond or treat me differently because of it. But personally, I don't really care. I'm not defined by my accreditations. So, like my computer science degree, RMC certificate, the the release or service certificate, all that stuff is in the recycle bin. They don't give a shit. So it's like I'm not going to do stuff just to become accredited. It's more of I want the knowledge. Yeah. So if I become a naturopath, it's because I'm actually interested in the material. If I find out that it's all just bootlicking and at the end of the day I'm being paid off by big pharma to push whatever, I'm not gonna I don't care about the accreditation. I'm just gonna be like, fuck you guys.
Yeah. Yeah, it seems like the biggest names in any field are always like they'll write like some book and it won't really have any truth to it. It'll just be like hype, mostly hype. But then they'll become like the big name and they'll go on the talk shows in like any field kind of.
Oh, that's how it works.
So then it's nice though when like if the product is just like purely art, like it seems kind of false if it's like a book that's promising people like some kind of health benefit and then it doesn't really deliver. That's kind of bad. But if it's just like a book or not a book, but like a piece of music or something that just like people hear the music and they get delivered the value by listening to it, and there's no like trickery going on, that's when it's kind of, at least products like that, even if like the music is not successful in a commercial way, at least it's like the music can't like lie to people. They either like enjoy it or they don't or something.
Yeah, music is definitely something I'm going to be pursuing on a regular basis.
I was part of I had fun like when I was in Seattle. I was joining this like online meetup of like people in the Seattle area, and it was like labeled like a video game dev meetup, but there was at least like one like musician. Actually, there was like two people that their full-time career was like music, and they were there because they kind of were wondering about like composing music for video games. And then like over the few months that I was doing like weekly meetups with this group, like they would get contracts with like different games to do the music, or they would like, one guy ended up like making his own game and then putting like some music behind it.
Oh yeah,
but that was yeah, that was cool because it was such a fun group to like hang out with. Like one of the guys was like self-publishing his own like D&D variation. Like he had like a physical book that was like the rules to his like D&D modified like rule set that he was like kind of working on publishing, and he was like hiring an artist. And another guy like worked at a AAA game company and was we would like collaborate on small little projects as a group sometimes. Or it was cool. It was definitely cool to hear like the guy would demo his music one time, like and it sounded good.
Yeah.
But that was it was neat to see that, just like people sort of like wanting to do creative stuff and bouncing off ideas off each other.
Because they want to. It's
Yeah.
much better than, it's actually different than what I'm used to, which is where you're like forced to do stuff.
Yeah.
I was always, for so long, I was forced to do things that, doing things on my own because I want them.
Yeah. Well, it's tough because like for me, like I want to be forced to do the things that I want to do, but I spend a lot of time trying to figure out what do I even want to do. And then like sometimes I feel like I really want to do something, but I don't have any motivation. And so then I enjoy finding some kind of like thing I can sign up for that will convince me like I'm building it for someone, like a game jam, like a game jam with a deadline. I always end up like making a game just because I sort of feel like I made a promise to some kind of contest to like submit something. And so I'm always like looking for ways to like almost like sort of trick myself into like feeling like there's a deadline when it's just, it is just self motivation. But if I sign up for some thing and if I partner with someone else, then I'm sort of there depending on me. And then I end up like actually doing it. uh, and then it's fun.
That's one way to do it.
Yeah.
I probably wouldn't give myself time if I don't have to.
You wouldn't do what?
Give myself a deadline.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's what's tough is there's projects, that I don't give myself a deadline for, and they just like kind of go on forever, and they sort of burn out eventually, and I forget about them. Sometimes I just want to like finish stuff, and then I just try to use whatever technique I can to like get something finished. But I don't really finish that many things because I don't always end up doing it. Sometimes I just sort of do stuff a little bit when I feel like it. And I guess it doesn't matter because when I finish stuff, it's not like anything happens. So there's really no point. I could just like work on stuff when I want to. I don't have to like publish anything or whatever. But there is like a fun flow, like putting in what feels like a good effort and then finishing something, putting it out there, and like, let's say like one other person chimes in and says they like it. That's a good, like nice, like ups and downs sort of like emotional journey, which is like refreshing. It's not fun to just be like, emotionally like flatlined, just like same every day. It's fun to have like some challenges and payoffs or something.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. Well, I guess
buddy.
We can wrap up.
Yeah, let's wrap it up. Appreciate the chat as always.
Yeah, I'll see you next time probably.
All right, and you have a good week.
Yeah, you too.
Take care.